everyone. I'm Ashley McManus, Senior Director of Global Marketing at SmartEye. Welcome to the Human Centric AI podcast, where each episode we interview thought leaders doing cutting edge work in the AI space. A little bit about us. SmartEye was founded over 20 years ago, and we have been known for developing some of the world's most sophisticated eye tracking systems. In recent years, we've expanded our technology and are now known as the global leader in human insight AI, technology that understands, supports, and predicts human behavior in complex environments. We are bridging the gap between humans and machines for a safe and sustainable future. Our multimodal software and hardware solutions provide unprecedented human insight in automotive and behavioral research, supported also by Affectiva and iMotions, companies we acquired in 2021. In automotive, we are leading the way towards safer and human-centric mobility through driver monitoring systems and interior sensing solutions. Our tech is embedded in next-generation vehicles and available as a standalone aftermarket solution for existing vehicles, fleet, and small volume OEMs. Today's episode features Detlef Wilke, Vice President of Innovation and Strategic Partnerships at SmartEye. With a degree in electrical engineering, Detlef has over 25 years of experience within the automotive industry, with deep technical expertise in driver monitoring and interior sensing systems. I invited him to talk today about the evolution and impact of driver monitoring and interior sensing technologies in the automotive industry, highlighting their role in enhancing vehicle safety and user experience. Let's listen in to learn more. Hi, everyone, and thank you for joining us today. With me, I have our own Detlef Wilke of SmartEye. Thank you so much for making the time to speak with me.
Yeah, happy to. Thanks for hosting me.
Absolutely. So to start, tell us about your background. What's your role at SmartEye today?
At SmartEye today, I'm Vice President for Innovation and Strategic Partnerships, which means I'm taking care about not only the past together with our team, but the future, but also strategize with partners to say, okay, what is our way to actually build an environment where we can jointly bring products to them, and that drives hardware and software, so to say.
So can you provide a short overview of the current landscape of driver monitoring and interior sensing technologies in the automotive industry?
Yeah, so the landscape is pretty homogenic, if you want to say so, in Europe, because in Europe we have legislation which today drives driver monitoring into the market as a 100% fitment requirement, depends on how you look at it, from 2024 or 26 for new homologations or all cars sold on the road, which is very good, obviously, for the safety part. And we do see also in Europe a strong pull towards CMS occupant monitoring for safety reasons, based on requirements that are not legal but important in Europe, and that's the Euro NCAP. They now stretch the safety requirements from the driver to the complete occupants of the cabin. That's pretty strong. It's a very good sign, so to say, for the market. And if you go outside of Europe, we have very diverse architecture, very moving take rates from customers. In the US, we see something in the double-digit percentage. In China, that is on the really low end. And in Japan, we have a high interest. So Japan and Japanese OEMs also have very high fitment rates of driver monitoring, now also moving to cabin monitoring and occupant monitoring systems.
Okay, so how would you say these technologies have evolved over the past 5 years or so?
Okay, 5 years. Yeah, basically 5 years ago, so 2018 plus, so to say, we had our first system in the market with BMW. Actually, we can publicly talk about that. Mostly we cannot publicly talk about that, unfortunately, because the OEMs don't want to disclose that. But it started off with driver monitoring, kind of the safety part of it. And in the last 5 years, we've seen a strong pull from the market, and we obviously jumped on that one ahead and built cabin monitoring systems. So cabin monitoring functions, which is a mix for us of safety, but also entertainment. While the safety part is the strongest market pull, and that's kind of where the systems, if you want to say, are financed. So they are brought into the cars from a hardware and software perspective by being safety relevant. And then on top, when that system is mounted anyway, kind of the base costs are covered. Then you get the fun features and kind of infotainment, comfort functions on top. And in the last 5 years, I would say worldwide, it has evolved into from 100% driver monitoring requests to us and the market to basically more than 90% complete occupant monitoring. So driver monitoring plus cabin. Single driver monitoring only requests are the absolute exception. cabin monitor is the absolute leading part.
Nice. Now, I know you touched on this earlier, but just to circle back, how would you say, and if you want to expand, how does legislation and regulation influence these types of developments?
And I say it is absolute key. It is vital, so to say, from the safety perspective. The entertainment, completely different story, completely different markets. For the entertainment, basically, that is the option that OEMs use to differentiate themselves. Entertainment and comfort packages, but it is so vital. We see that in the market that legislation or kind of quasi-legislation, so NCAP, IHS requirements, NHTSA requirements jump in to actually drive the demand so that every OEM has a similar challenge, because part of these systems are safety supportive, but they can also be a bit nagging in time, because when you are distracted, right, the system will alarm you and it has a cost. So it's hard for an OEM to go in first into a market and offer the system, because it has cost involved and it has, let's say, good and bad perceptions, so to say, from drivers involved. That's why it's key that legislation or something similar to legislation hits it, so that every OEM actually has the need to bring these systems in the market. And that's what we've seen in Europe. And that's what we hope that also for the US as one of the major markets will happen. And that's where we see at some point also in China, there will be movement from legislator. But that's hard to predict, so to say.
Yeah. So what would you say the key technological advancements have really driven in these different developments?
Yeah, so first it's about availability of images. So there's a certain specific need on these images. They need to be in infrared. They need to actually have something which is called global shutter mode to actually deliver good images at day and at nighttime. And it's a bit different than on the outside cameras for ADAS. And these images in high resolution were not available, so to say. They were low resolution in kind of 2015, 2018. So they were limited. Now the market has pulled up, and now we have fairly high resolution images, kind of 5 megapixel plus minus, so to say. And this resolution is actually now enough to capture with one camera or two cameras, so to say, enough features from inside the cabin to actually get them into our AI and have them recognized. And the second part is compute power. You need a certain amount of compute power, and that in the cars has massively increased in the last 5 years plus. So it's, I would say, even exponential. And we don't need exponential growth, but the more features you bring, the more video you have to take in. You need a certain footprint. And that now is, I would say, vastly available from high power compute systems, where we don't really have to have a dedicated ECU. We are in some form of ADAS system or some form of infotainment system. And that is one of the key requirements. All of that drives availability up technologically, but it also costs down. So it means these systems become affordable, so to say, for the OEM.
Okay. Now, let's talk use cases. So can you give us a few examples of how these different technologies improve vehicle safety and user experience?
Maybe to start from the start, driver monitoring basically means we typically have systems that can capture the head area, so something like that, of the driver. And we monitor the features in the face. So kind of, where's the head looking, so to say? Where are the eyes looking? Are your eyes open, closed? How often do you blink? What's your behavioral state? Are you speaking to derive safety? And one safety function is, for example, the most primitive, if you want to say so, you fell asleep, right? You need to alarm, you need to stop the car. The other one is we predict drowsiness, that we actually are able to put the right alarm in at the right point of time to say, okay, brake recommendation early enough and at the right point that you actually can say, okay, yes, my car recommends me a brake and now I'm actually needing a brake. And then the higher level is you need to stop, right? You need to stop the car immediately, kind of an alarm you are unable to drive at the right point in time before you actually fall asleep. So that's kind of driver monitoring. And it's also about distraction using your smartphone, but that is kind of the driver monitoring part. Classical features are mostly in all cars coming up in Europe. And then you go for safety of the occupants. And safety of the occupants means you get cameras that have a wider scope. You see more of the driver, you see more of the front passenger, which means you see at least the upper body part, which gives us the capability to see if you actually are belted. So we can track and recognize the seatbelt. So first, are you belted, but also are you belted correctly? You use a belt simulator to drive without a seatbelt, which is kind of utterly stupid, but people tend to do it. Do you sit on top of the seatbelt? There's a problem for delivery services, right? You buckle the belt up, but you buckle the seat and just sit on top. Also not really recommended if you want to survive, if you want to say so. But one major thing, exactly so for Europe and also for the US, is we now can recognize children left behind in the car. We can see child seats. We can see that the child seat, if it's kind of in the passenger seat, is against the driving direction when you need to disable the airbag, for example. So that can be a warning. Future, it will be an automatic disabling of that airbag. We can see unsafe behavior. So for instance, that's also coming up with Euro NCAP requirements, at least on the road.
Yeah.
If you as a passenger have your legs on the passenger airbag, might be very comfortable in a long haul ride, but in a crash, it is actually disastrous, right? So, and these are things we can actually support. Or if you're out of position, if you're leaning over to the side, actually, if you're not in a good position for the seatbelt, that can be deployed. If you actually come very close to the airbag. So I'm sorry, I need to stop talking, but basically there's a 30, 40 safety features which are derived from that camera systems for the complete cabin.
Perfect. So these different examples that you just listed, how are they reflected in how Smart Eyes customers are using or choosing to implement our tech in their vehicles?
How they are basically, maybe it's about how do we convince our customers to get the technology in, right? So as long as the technology is a low-cost feature, so coming to the point, okay, you have a certain camera and ECU system mounted, so compute power there, and you maybe have driver monitoring. If then the camera system is physically able to deliver those features, then it's a fairly small cost adder. So I would say, even if not legislated, we have a bunch of customers that then takes this low-cost software-only adders, if you want to say so, and enhance their safety features to actually show to the customers, okay, we now have additional safety features, right? Our car is safer than our competitors. That's one point. And the other point for Europe is you have a strong pull now from Euro NCAP 2026 to 2029, which actually gives you more points towards 5-star ratings on interior sensing, on occupant monitoring and alarm systems. So by that, we really see a strong pull of the majority of OEMs to say, okay, what can we do with current systems? How do we go for 26 and 29 Euro NCAP requirements with reasonable cost? And take a trade-off. And then you actually have these entertainment functions, comfort functions, where we have emotion recognition, to just go for that example, which is an adder, so to say, to an existing hardware, to an existing system, but enables you some fun facts that you can have, let's say, this happy video shots or videos or screenshots from a ride where everyone actually was talking, was happy, then you just store them. And after the ride, you can select that. And we talk about video calls with automated, let's say, muting of people that are not inside that video session. So there's just a ton of functions, so to say. But at the end, phrase it in short words is, as long as the basic hardware is coming in and mandatory to the car, then there's a pretty big set of features which our customers individually select, so to say, to make their difference, to place themselves in front of customers as a brand that has unique feature offering on safety and infotainment and comfort packages.
Very cool. So what are your thoughts on, the most exciting opportunities for interior sensing tech in the next 5 to 10 years?
Oh my God. Yeah, that's practically unpredictable. We do see a lot of traction on generative models, so to say, large language models, which partly will be placed inside the car. So we expect that you have a large language model for interaction. And that for us does not only mean voice interaction or text interaction where you ask something, but includes the complete cabin and the driver. So example is we have the information of what you visually do, what you speak, how is your mood in speaking, how is your mood, and with partners, right? But the visual part comes from us. But that kind of holistic model of all passengers inside the car, including the driver, allows you to not only ask your in-car assistant or ask a question, but actually to turn the principle around. Maybe that was my vision for 2030 or earlier. Say you actually have the car talking to you, kind of noticing, okay, what do you need? If there's an in-car discussion and let's say the people inside the car have opted in, I see actually an AI, a large language model, listening into your conversation and actually stepping in at the right point. Okay. And being kind of another adder, another information source, another partner, so to say, in the car. And for that, you need to have full human understanding, right? It's not enough if you just listen. You need to see. You need to be able to visually see, is it the right point of time to now jump into a conversation? Or is it the right point of time where the in-car assistant has to stop talking, because you can read that in people's faces, but you cannot see that from spoken content. And fun features. I mean, gamification, entertainment, I think that's strongly upcoming. China paves the way, I would say. Some really odd features. And I think a bunch of those features will also make it to the Western Hemisphere market.
So how do you really see the role of interior sensing evolving with the rise of autonomous vehicles and advanced driver assistance systems, or ADAS?
Yeah, there we actually have interesting discussions around. So we have a bunch of customers, thinks of driver monitoring. It says once we actually have autonomous vehicles in the market, you don't need driver monitoring, but it's actually wrong. You need more monitoring before, just kind of the focus switches. But if you have automated driving, then you first need to make sure that you actually have a passenger in, right? And it depends on what level you are. So on a lot of levels, which I would expect the next 2-3 years to come to the market and maybe forward, you will not have full autonomy. You need to have the driver in the loop. And if you are reaching high autonomy levels, you still need to have the driver being able to take back control, right, on roads where the, let's say, supported system will not be able to take that. So it means that's one part. And the other part is you need to have all passengers actually in the safe position. So just think about fully autonomous driving, which is okay, but then you have unbuckled passengers that actually lie on the floor or have unsecured goods. So it means in a crash case, that is actually dramatic what the impact is. And think about relaxed seating position. And you don't want a 5-point seatbelt to you, kind of lay flat and still be crash case. There's a ton which needs to be done. And as soon as you talk about automated driving, the next step is actually you stop the thought of owning your car, right? There will be more robotaxis coming in, and you have a totally different set of requirements for robotaxis. So let's see where that path goes. I personally think it will be still level 3 plus for quite a while until we reach level 4 and 5. But there's so much more. And the point is, what do you do when you have an automated car? So what do you do with your free time? There's so much more for interaction that interior sensing with vision, I'd say voice, and with additional sensors like radars can deliver and actually has to deliver.
Okay. So what do you think the biggest challenges are faced by these, tech providers and vehicle producers when developing and implementing interior sensing technology?
Yeah. Placement, physical placement of the cameras, and cost. Cost is actually the main issue, because in an ideal world, you have more cameras in than just one, and there's no ideal camera position, right? It's just not the software. From certain positions, you see certain things. For instance, you will not see a child in the footwell of the second row with a single camera in the front, because it's just nothing to see. So we would like to have as much cameras as possible in the car, makes our life easy, gets the functionality to the maximum, but obviously that's unaffordable. So that's maybe the main point. Find good business cases, and then you find positions for the camera. And we've been all over that, right? We've been in every possible camera position that you can mount in a car. And most of them we actually have or will have in production. And let's put it like that. If there's the money and there's the will to bring a feature in, you will find a technical way to solve it. But I think money, actually, the way to have a business case is the main hurdle. And that's why it's so important for us to get the maximum of feature set out of a single camera position. That's where we're really strong in, to say, okay, that's available technology. We maximize the content. And then also, on the other hand, to minimize the footprint that we need for compute. That's also one of our key market strengths, I would say. We are really narrow at what we do. We try to optimize the code so that we don't take a too big footprint in the high power compute systems, because that footprint also costs money. And the smaller footprint is, the lower is kind of the cost for the OEM.
I think you started to answer most of my next question, but I'll ask it anyway, just in case you want to add to it. For example, how is Smart Eye working to solve these challenges? Is there anything you would add to the challenges that Smart Eye is working towards solving?
Yeah. Then adding is solving means we are not only a software provider. One key parameter for us is we are a solutions provider. That means we don't only look at the software, we look at the complete system where we understand that system, and we supply those systems also. And to kind of give you background, so we also have the capability to actually specify camera location. So we have the synthetic data generation that before the car is even kind of coming close, we can synthesize and say, okay, a certain camera position with a certain image line, a certain lens combination will actually give that image inside the car. Then we can run our algorithm and say, okay, you get that performance. If you modify the camera position, this gets better, that's get worse. And that is part of the key facts how to not only address that our software at the end runs as expected, but also to have the most cost-efficient approach for the OEM, because that allows you to take decisions and trade-offs, what we want to optimize for, and allows also to optimize the camera systems on the hardware side, which we do support to our T1s and OEMs. To say, okay, we take for you the trade-off and we find the optimal, let's say, center point between cost and let's say, feature delivery. And that's, I think, what makes a difference for SmartEye among a lot of competitors.
Okay. Well, I'm curious what you're seeing in terms of major trends influencing the development and the adoption of interior sensing technologies in the automotive industry.
Yeah, the major trend, I touched on that earlier, is differentiation. So above, so to say, the minimum hurdle, which is legislation and Euro NCAP, differentiation is one thing. And at the end, I mean, the feature set which we discussed, so to say, with our customers, which push to the market and which we also get pulled from the market, is always somewhere between 30 and 90 features. So that's kind of the features if you just go for the optical system and even leave the rest like fusion, with radar or voice out. It's vast, right? And we obviously on the most relevant part. But it boils down that you have a set of 30 to 40 features, which is kind of standard by the market. And typically an OEM that goes for a cabin monitoring, occupant monitoring system will actually go for 15 to 25 features that they actually will plan to put in production. And it is actually interesting that we see a lot of difference on the OEM. So there's kind of a common set, so to say, on the safety part, but then OEMs in really different directions. Some actually focus on entertainment, so to say, to make that offering to the customers, and others really focus on bringing the safety part to the customers. But it also, you have a few brands which stand for safety, and you have a few that kind of stand for innovation, and they kind of build on that core story that they have. Also for anything that's interior, HMI interaction stuff.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that kind of leads to my next question, which was how do you think consumer preferences are shaping these trends?
To answer today, because most of that systems are not in mass volume. So DMS, different story, driver monitoring is a mass volume market, but it is as hidden as possible, right? It's a safety feature that in best case only is visible to you or audible to you when you need it. But most of the cabin monitoring approaches we at least see in the Western Hemisphere. China is a bit ahead with features, maybe not with quality, but with features. They will come to the market. So we'll see most of these cabin monitoring features and functions coming in earliest 25, 26 going forward. So that's kind of when people actually will learn what features are. Today it is mostly unknown what you will get in those cars. It is unknown if you actually will be able to pinpoint somewhere with your hand and get information and ask kind of what is that, right? That's not there. That's maybe there in prototypes, but the vast amount of car buyers don't know what's going to hit them as an offering. And that's maybe part of the problem. How do you educate your customers that there's so much things that are ongoing that you can cliff gesture, head direction, interaction, eye gaze, you have gamification, that you will have video calls in a lot of cars which don't only deliver video, but that go for automotive. I mean, explain 30 features to customers. So that's maybe the challenge for the OEMs to really get it through. What is it that you how to explain that to a customer? How do you explain that actually the child left behind alarm? How to explain that you now are informed that there's a child seat mounted in the wrong direction and you've forgotten to actually switch off the airbag? Some of those things will be natural, but some of those things will have to be explained before purchase, so to say.
Yeah. And you mentioned a few different countries, but I'm curious how the adoption and implementation of interior sensing technologies vary across different regions. So like North America, Europe, Asia, what are your thoughts there?
So Asia, we have to actually do two things. Asia with and without China. So let's say Asia without China has a pretty high adoption rate, I would say, even though not directly legally required. Japan, there's a bit of more legal requirements, if you want to say so. There's really adoption, I would say you have, hard to say, 90% plus maybe in those markets or vast majority of cars. China, we see coming up. So there were low numbers like 5% take rate because nothing is mandated there. You don't need to place a safety system visually based inside the car interior. They now come up to 10%, and the estimates go with no legislation. It might be 10, 20% when legislation hits, or the China NCAP, this has requirements there, will be adopted more. It will hit, but my take is it will be sub 50% for quite a while until there is legislation requiring that.
Okay.
In the US, I would say very diverse. We have a few OEMs there, a few big three, so to say, which you say adopt now cabin monitoring and driver monitoring, and we expect pretty high volumes on that generically as a market, but there's no legal requirement. So it is hard to say how that will evolve. I think in premium cars, you will see a really high percentage. In the US, low-cost cars, you might actually still for a while have really low percentage of fitment due to cost.
Yeah, I was going to also ask what you're kind of touching on. What are the unique challenges and opportunities in each of these markets? Is there anything additional you would add to those areas?
Yeah, I mean, for me, all markets except for China develop in the same direction. So it's safety driven, and then customers that very carefully, so to say, add in technologies on top to see how that resonates. Cabin monitoring, entertainment functions. It's not mandatory to sell a car, but in China, it's totally different. Even though the fitment numbers are low, there's much less focus on the safety part. That's kind of the underlying feature. But there you want playful things. There you want actually to have cat-eye overlays, so to say, in your video calls, a karaoke session. So it's a totally different market with totally different demand. It's very playful. They try things out. Some will resonate, some will actually be not resonating and kind of disappear as a low cost or no function. So I'm curious what that will bring. I'm just sure that it will make a major difference. We will see a lot of differentiation going forward, and I can't predict what 27, 28, 29 will be, but I can predict it will be massively different than today.
Yeah, makes sense. All right, last question for you. How do you envision using interior sensing to enhance the overall driving and passenger experience in the future?
Yeah, we touched a bit on that one, but I would say I'm expecting that you have more interaction with your car, that it becomes much more naturalistic, that interior sensing underlying, let's say, best case for you, invisible, so to say, enhances your safety, that it only gets visible to you when you need it. And that's for the complete cabin, first row, second row, that you will be notified when you forget things, when you've not, let's say, buckled up people or even big packets correctly on the safety part. But anyway, that should be invisible. And then that you actually have interaction, that you can use your body information. So kind of, where am I sitting? That you get friendly reminders. You could now take your legs off, so to say, the dashboard, because we are driving on a highway and it's not safe. So please do that. And again, touching the point, I think that the complete part of gesture interaction, eye gaze interaction with HMIs, highlighting at night when you look at, right? I mean, that's a very easy function. And I wonder why it's not there with our technology since 5 years plus, that you just use the information that someone is looking at night somewhere to the side, right? You might just search for something, but it's so easy, technology-wise speaking, to give you a highlight, right? That you just light up the area where you look or where you touch. To actually low light everything else to keep you concentrated on the driving task. You don't need to actually have a light on your panel for air conditioning, right? That's not needed at night, but you need it when you actually want to touch or look at that way. And that's the right point when you take up that information. So I would expect you reshape the way that cars look and act, so to say, when you interact. Just go for facial identification, right? When you enter your car today, in best case, you have kind of a key that is personalized for you. Your seat moves is your key, but what if you have 3-4 family members? Most of the people don't buy 3-4 keys to just have them personalized. But if you do that with facial identification, then your car will actually recognize you, will pull up your preferences, might even authenticate you to actually have then access to your mails directly, even if you, let's say, use pairing or not. Maybe also authenticate payments. Why do you actually have to get out of a car to do payment authentication in some cases, right? Why do you have to? Okay, for the US, not relevant. For Europe, you have to get out of your car. You have to actually step in and then pay your gasoline, right? And that's kind of one natural. Why would you do that? Just go in, approve the payment with your car, and you're good to go. But there's just a ton of these options. Looking forward to be part of this.
Nice. Awesome. Well, that is all I have for you, Detlef. It was a pleasure having you back on the podcast. And thank you once again so much for speaking with me today.
Yeah, absolutely. My pleasure. Thank you.
I thought Detlef's explanation on how regulatory requirements, technological advancements, and consumer preferences are actively shaping the development and implementation of interior sensing systems, particularly with the rise of autonomous vehicles and advanced driver assistance systems, or ADAS. I also thought the stance on how there will be significant opportunities for these technologies to even further improve the driving and passenger experience, despite the challenges faced in different markets. I hope you enjoyed today's episode. Don't forget to subscribe to our Human-Centric AI podcast on iTunes, Google Play, Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts for new episodes. We're also on social media, so please talk to us on X, Facebook, LinkedIn, and Instagram to share any feedback you have on the show. Don't forget to rate us and comment with your feedback to help make the podcast more discoverable for others. Until next time, thanks for listening.